She's a middle-aged mother of 3, trying hard to lose some weight. And with the help of the diet pills prescribed by her doctor, she does, at first. After a few weeks, the weight loss stops. But she feels so tense and edgy whenever she's off the pills that she keeps right on taking them, just to feel normal again. He's a bone-tired, long-haul truck driver who can't afford to sleep until he pulls his rig into the terminal 400 miles away. He stops at a roadside diner to drink a quick cup of coffee, black, and gulp down a handful of pills, bennies, enough he hopes to keep him awake for the rest of the trip. He's a high school football player, psyching himself up for the last game of the season. If he plays well, he just might be offered a college scholarship. He tosses some Dexies into his mouth, washes them down with water, and waits for the familiar surge of energy that they release. He is convinced the little pills make him, somehow, a better player. She's 15 years old, and she knows all about pills. She's seen her parents pop them, and some of her friends, too. First uppers to get high, then downers when they get too high. She can't understand why so many people say pill popping is dangerous. After all, her family doctor prescribes them, and many of the people she loves, respects, and admires use them regularly. Pill popping. Has it become the new American way of life? Like it or not, legal or not, people throughout human history have always used drugs to expand their minds and alter their moods. In their endless search for heightened consciousness or inner vision or religious experience, or just simply to escape from the trials and torments and traumas of everyday living. For most of that time, they had to make do with whatever nature provided. Substances like alcohol and betel nuts and cannabis and coca leaves and peyote and opium. But today, thanks to the miracle of modern chemistry, they can choose from a veritable supermarket of psychoactive mind-benders packaged in convenient pill form, legally prescribed by their doctors to cure their real and imagined ills, or else illegally purchased at considerably higher prices from their friendly neighborhood drug dealers. Some of these respectable mind and mood alterers are true chemical miracles. They are highly effective tools in the control and management of certain physical and mental illnesses that might otherwise be unmanageable, even life-threatening. But most of them have a dangerously high potential for misuse and abuse. Yet, each and every year, American doctors write close to 300 million prescriptions for psychoactive drugs, primarily amphetamines, uppers, and barbiturates, tranquilizers, and sleeping pills, downers. And with or without prescriptions, millions of Americans consume them at the staggering rate of at least 40 billion pills a year. Of course, not every pill taker becomes a pill junkie, but an alarmingly high percentage of them do. According to current estimates, at least 20 million Americans have already crossed the thin line between use and abuse. Most of them did so without even being aware of it, simply because they had never been warned about the potent addictive powers of their respectable upper or downer. Let's go back again to the slightly overweight housewife, the truck driver, and the athlete, and see how dependency on amphetamines, uppers, often begins, and where it is likely to end. Chemically speaking, there are 3 major groups of uppers: amphetamine, sold under the trade name Benzedrine, but more familiarly known to the last couple of generations as bennies; dextroamphetamine sulfate, a somewhat more powerful compound most commonly sold as Dexedrine, or Dexies; and methamphetamine hydrochloride, methadone, or meth, or speed, the most powerful of the amphetamines. Medically speaking, all are central nervous system stimulants. They act by causing the release of a natural chemical from the body's nerve endings. And that, in turn, raises the blood pressure, increases the heart rate and the rate of metabolism, sharpens and focuses concentration, elevates the mood, and decreases the appetite. As a result, the dieter feels less hungry. The truck driver feels less tired. And the athlete feels a sudden surge of boundless energy and a soaring sense of confidence and self-assurance. These effects don't usually last very long, only about 4 hours or so following the ingestion of a typical 5 milligram dosage. And the down that follows the high often leaves the pill popper tense, irritable, restless, and ready for another pop. But instead of allowing the body to recover naturally from the effects of the drug, the impatient pill popper reaches for another upper. And the psychoactive roller coaster ride starts all over again, with another burst of euphoria and pulsing energy, another surge of excitability, cocky self-confidence, and over-talkativeness. And then, when the drug's effects have run their course, another dizzying drop into a seemingly bottomless pit of restlessness, anxiety, depression, and bone-deep exhaustion. In time, sometimes in as little time as a couple of weeks, depending on the kind and size of the dosage, tolerance to the drug builds up. It is now likely to take a double or triple or quadruple dosage or even more to reach that initial level of euphoric well-being, or to wipe out the pounding headache, the irritability, the feelings of hostility, the depression and fatigue that occur as soon as the drug's effects wear off. By now, the pill popper, without even being aware of it, has probably become psychologically dependent on uppers. And although physical dependence does not usually occur, the amphetamine habit is, nevertheless, extremely difficult to kick. A fact the pill popper learns the hard way whenever he or she tries to pull away from the drug. For the last 40 years or so, ever since Benzedrine was first marketed in pill form in 1937, hundreds of millions of people around the world have stumbled into amphetamine dependency in just this way, and millions of them have gone on to become chronic amphetamine abusers. Many of them picked up their habit during World War II. Armies on both sides routinely issued amphetamines to their troops to relieve combat fatigue. While back on the home front, countless others popped bennies to ease the tensions of round-the-clock assembly lines and the agonies of wartime separation and loss. After the war, amphetamines continued to be widely and carelessly used for everything from the relief of hay fever and head colds to an appetite suppressant for weight-conscious Americans, to a stay-awake stimulant for countless cramming students, to a general-purpose feel-good prescription for all kinds of physical and emotional ills. Then, in the early 1960s, amphetamine abuse took a far more dangerous direction. Somewhere on the West Coast, probably in Haight-Ashbury, San Francisco's haven for hippies and flower children, someone discovered that mainlining methamphetamine, injecting the drug directly into the bloodstream instead of ingesting it in pill form, brought a more immediate, more intense high. And suddenly, the speed freak was born, and so was a whole new speed subculture. The typical speed freak may well have started out as a taster, popping a dozen or so uppers just for kicks. But something in his or her personality, some emotional hang-up perhaps, or a deep-rooted feeling of insecurity, propelled the taster to go for the real thing, a terrifying needle trip called a speed run. The run begins with a massive amount of speed, many times larger than the usual dosage, shot directly into the speeder's vein. That first hit produces an instantaneous rush of intense physical sensations, followed almost immediately by a euphoric super high as the body's stored up energy is released by the drug. But the high doesn't last very long, and the speeder must inject another massive amount of the drug, and another, to keep the run going. By the second day, the dosage must be doubled or tripled to maintain the high, and the number of injections has probably reached 5 or 6. By the third day, the speeder may well be injecting 500 milligrams every 2 or 3 hours, an amount that would probably kill a non-user. Yet, not even this enormous dosage of speed can bring back that first euphoric super high. Too much tolerance to the drug has been built up with each succeeding injection. Meanwhile, dangerous side effects are building up too. Because the drug forces the body to work non-stop, the speeder can't eat or sleep. Malnutrition and insomnia develop, leading to an increased risk of convulsions, brain cell damage, cerebral hemorrhage, and even heart failure, along with the always present danger, whenever a hypodermic needle is used, of hepatitis, blood poisoning, and endocarditis. At some point during the run, often before the end of the first day, the speeder's drug-induced confidence has collapsed into restlessness, confusion, irritation, and hostility. Now the hallucinations are likely to begin, particularly the terrifying sensation that bugs are crawling on and under the speeder's skin. Or, more ominously, the speeder is likely to become paranoid and begin lashing out in a blind, violent rage to protect himself against imagined enemies. Finally, after 3 or 4 days, the next injection no longer brings a high, because mind and body have been pushed far beyond the limits of human endurance, and the speeder must come down or crash and face the horrors of withdrawal. First, there is the physical agony of withdrawal, the total exhaustion, the gut-racking cramps and uncontrollable tremors, and the mind-shattering insomnia that can stretch out for days, even weeks. And then there is the psychological agony of withdrawal from amphetamine psychosis, a condition that duplicates the symptoms of paranoid schizophrenia and almost always occurs during a speed run. In spite of the warnings that speed kills, overdosing on amphetamines is rare. What amphetamine abuse does do is devastate the body and rot the brain. It squeezes years of aging into a few short weeks or months. It unleashes bizarre and violent behavior and makes the speed freak one of the most irrational and most dangerous of all drug abusers, both to himself and to others. And yet, in spite of tight controls by the federal government on the legitimate manufacture and marketing of amphetamines, in spite of the somewhat belated recognition by members of the medical profession that amphetamines are highly dangerous drugs, in spite of the word-of-mouth warnings of those who have taken it that the speed trip is a rough one, millions of people, either deliberately or unsuspectingly, continue to get caught up in their own terrifying speed trap and continue to pay the devastating price it extracts from both mind and body.